Good morning, and I'd like to welcome all of you to this very interesting and exciting session on reinventing democracy through entrepreneurship. I think we all agree that one of the very important components of a democracy is having a very thriving market economy with lots of entrepreneurs. And we also need to have a very open system where new entrepreneurs can come and be disruptive, create new companies, throw out incumbents. And once you have that kind of a thriving market economy where you have new people coming in, then you're going to have new innovations, new products, new services, new business models, and very importantly, lots of job creation. So I think a very important part of reinventing democracy is economic democracy and this entry and exit of new entrepreneurs into the system. So that's the theme of this session. We have 45 minutes. We have three very, very important and very, very dynamic and successful entrepreneurs here. We have Meena Ganesh. Meena Ganesh has been a serial entrepreneur. She and her husband, K. Ganesh, have done 3 to 4 companies so far. The latest company was Tutor Vista, which has just been sold to Pearson Group for over $200 million, and they're on to the next. Now I think they are serial parallel. They do 4 companies at a time. So I think Meena and her husband are now working on 4 companies simultaneously. So Meena is a classic example of a very successful serial entrepreneur. Then we have Binny Bansal. Binny and his friend Sachin Bansal, both are from IIT Delhi, and within 5 years, they built Flipkart into India's leading e-commerce site. Again, first generation entrepreneurs. His parents were public sector employees, and he and Sachin started Flipkart. Binny is very coy about the market cap of Flipkart. He refused to tell me, but those in the know tell me that its valuation is over $1 billion. So I think it's amazing that 2 young people have started a company and within 5 years have created a market cap of over $1 billion. And the third speaker is Alok Kejriwal. Again, he's done many companies, Mobile to Win, Games to Win, and he's also a self-proclaimed Marwadi rebel. So we'll find out what he means by that in the course of this discussion. So what we're going to do now is I'll request each of them to speak for 5 minutes and share their views, and then we'll have a good conversation. And then we have an expert panel. My friend Shailesh is here, so they'll ask some questions and we'll throw it open to the audience. We'll do all that in 45 minutes. So Meena, maybe you can start up either from here or from there and talk about your experience as an entrepreneur and what it means to really challenges of capital, of getting people, regulations, whatever that you feel are relevant. Thanks.
I think I'll just sit here and speak with you. Good morning, and it's an absolute delight to be here as a part of the India Today Conclave, and more so to be part of this extremely accomplished group of entrepreneurs. So thanks to India Today Group for inviting me here today. What I wanted to do over the next 5 minutes or so is to talk a little bit about my journey across 3 different generations of startups, and comment a little bit upon the environment and the challenges that existed then and how they have morphed over the years now. Our first foray into starting a new enterprise was in the year 1990. At that point in time, starting a business meant setting up a factory which had smoke coming out. You need to have a father who was very rich and who had lots of money, who could fund you to go and do that. Or you had land which came through the generations, which you could offer as collateral and take debt. We had none of those. So what was the best thing to do was to start something in the area of services, put in a meager savings of some 40,000 rupees or whatever we had at that time. But the important thing was to have a starter contract. So low risk, still wanted to do our own thing, get a contract, so some money is coming in, one of us works, one of us goes in and does all the exciting things. So we had a very exciting run over an 8-year period, built a fairly profitable and successful business, exited it in 1998. But obviously, because there was no capital infusion, there was no debt, there was no equity available, there were no VCs, so we just built on whatever best we could in our own steam. Very happy with what we did, touched a lot of lives. It was in the area of IT services, networking, maintenance and so on. Very nice little business, but it was a nice little business. It wasn't anything beyond that. I can say that very clearly now. Our next brush with startup was in 2000, when we had a lot of very successful IT companies, IT offshoring companies. Of course, Nandan is there, right by my side, as a beacon of what you could do in the IT services industry. So we were very excited to look at that space, but really the buzz was more about customer support. So we decided to go into that sphere with Customer Asset, which was our first BPO company. It's probably one of the first 2 or 3 BPO companies that started up in 2000. VCs had just about started, so we got a little bit of funding, we got started. But, you know, the interesting thing was that at that point in time, the government had relaxed a lot of things, and starting up, especially in the export area, anything that was, that could be called as a software export entity, there were a lot of support, SOPs. We could start up a company really fast, and Karnataka was really well done at that time in terms of the STP support that we got. So literally, I think we decided, and within 15 days we were up and running. But that's where the whole challenge began, because especially in the BPO industry, there's a huge amount of infrastructure requirement, be it power, be it telecom infrastructure, be it just transporting the employees back and forth in the middle of the night, to providing them food, to security. All of that had to be done by the entrepreneur themselves. Now I feel very proud that not only did we create a BPO industry, but we created a cab transport industry, security industry, we created catering industry. Hey, but you know what that does? That makes the entrepreneur less focused on what they are actually supposed to be doing, less profitable in the long run. And today, if you look at it, countries like Philippines and especially Philippines is doing extremely well in the BPO sector, and margins are being squeezed out of this business from India. And isn't that something that one should look forward from the government, from the state, that these kind of support structures are available? So those are some of the thoughts that we went through at that time. In 2007, then we started this company called Tutor Vista, which was to start with online tutoring to the global market, and then we started providing a number of products and services to the K-12 education sector in India. A lot of time had passed since then. Huge amount of VCs and Ps were present. There were a lot of exits that had happened. So there was a lot more of excitement in investing and waiting for the exits to happen. So we managed to raise a fair bit of money and build a very successful business. Very proud of what we did. We sold it to Pearson just recently in February. Actually, we exited. So very good run. And also what I see in terms of the environment, especially I live in Bangalore, it really is buzzing with startup energy. It really is. You see a lot of youngsters who are now, instead of taking up well-paid jobs, willing to start something on their own in their garage. There are VCs, angels, seed funds, accelerators, incubators, you name it, they're all there. Everybody is very proud of calling them as themselves as a startup mentor or a startup incubator. Great stuff is going on. But while all of that is happening, there are certain clouds in the horizon that make people sit up and worry about it. Because, you know, why do VCs and Ps and all these people invest? Because they want to exit at some stage, okay? The whole business about investing in a startup is to have some kind of clarity that you will exit at some stage. Now, some of the things that have happened in the last few years have worried people. For instance, in the last year, I think the budget gave a lot of shivers to people, and still we are shivering out of that there could be tax implications with retrospective effect. Now you play the game and you complete the game and someone told you, hey, but you know the rules are different. Now you got to go back, pay taxes for the last 5 years or whatever it is. That scares the entire energy out of entrepreneurs and out of the people who are funding the entrepreneurs. The second thing was about the whole angel tax. Okay, you say that as an angel investor, you put in some money and you're going to get taxed for the potential, for the difference between the book value and the market value of the investment that you're making. Now, what is the story about angel investing? You invest in 100, 5 may succeed. The other 95 are surely going to go down the drain. It's risk capital and it has to be supported differently. Now, I work with a lot of young entrepreneurs who now look towards Singapore to go and start up. I asked him why. It's a very different story. In Singapore, an angel investor is actually allowed to write off the amount of 50% of the investment that they make from their income. They get a tax break. The other way around over here, that we get taxed for being an angel investor. So these, and of course the whole e-commerce thing, and I'm sure Bini will be better positioned to talk about that, to not allow FDI in e-commerce and to create a lot of discomfort and uncertainty in the market. These are things which start to take the wind out of the sail of entrepreneurs. My view is that entrepreneurship is a way by which a country continues to innovate. There's a lot of investments that comes in. There's a lot of new jobs that are created. Most new jobs get created out of new ideas and new businesses. And we should see a lot more of support coming to help that rather than to put a spoke in the way. So that's really all I have to say at this stage.
Thanks. Thank you, Meena. I think you raised a lot of very important questions on regulation, taxation, and all that. Now, Bini, you built a e-commerce company from scratch. You want to do it from there? Sure.
Thank you, India Today, for having me as part of this panel. I wanted to start off with a joke. So I looked up Google for the words serial entrepreneur jokes. It seems like nobody makes jokes about serial entrepreneurs. The results I got back from Google were all about how serial entrepreneurship is not a joke. So instead, I'll start by talking about something very interesting which we did a couple of weeks back on 27th February. On this day, we managed to deliver 50,000 orders of a fascinating new book by one of my favorite authors. 50,000 orders delivered in a single day across the length and breadth of the country, in 500 cities and 6,000 pin codes. 50,000 fans of this author received the book on the very day of the launch without having to step out of their homes or offices. No prizes for guessing the book. It was, of course, Amish Tripathi's record-breaking new book, The Oath of Fire Putras. I'm here to share the Flipkart story with you all, and I hope that in the process, I will be able to bring alive a few topics of today's panel discussion. I'd like to tell the Flipkart story in two parts. Part one is about starting up. Part two is about scaling up. Before we started Flipkart, both Sachin and I were working in Amazon in a 12 to 5 job. It was a 12 to 5 job because we used to go to office at 12 p.m., check email, have lunch, play table tennis, go to barista for a coffee, and then come back home at 5 p.m. It was really frustrating. And so we started thinking about starting our own company. Steve Jobs' famous advice to a graduating class at Stanford was to stay hungry, stay foolish. In our case, we were really hungry to do something meaningful and worthwhile. And we were foolish enough to be ignorant of the fact that we were two 25-year-old software engineers who had no idea of the challenges of running an e-commerce business. So, in September 2007, we quit our jobs at Amazon with a bold vision of creating the Amazon of India. But there was a problem. We both came from middle-class families, and as a result, we had only 4 lakh rupees to start the business. But in hindsight, this lack of capital turned out to be a good thing. 4 lakh rupees meant that our marketing budget was zero. This forced us to be extremely customer-focused in everything we did, and as a result, we were able to create world-class service. We would under-promise and over-deliver. Most of our early customers became die-hard fans. Word of mouth became our marketing tool, and it was completely free and the most effective. So in 3 years, we went from 0 to 50 crores in revenue. And in 3 years, we had grown enough to challenge the well-established bookstores, and we were now giving them a run for their money. In 3 years, a couple of software engineers created a new market where none had existed before. The lesson here is that capital can help, but is definitely not necessary to build a substantial business. Vision and hard work are many times enough to achieve success. Now, to part 2 of the story. If the first 3 years were about creating a new market, the next 2 years were about expanding the market and changing the buying habits of 5 million people. In this phase, venture capital actually played a key enabling role for us. To do what we did, we needed to build a winning team. So we decided to hire people not for their experience, but for their energy and attitude. We hired people who had the hunger to create something new and who believed that there are no limits. We found all these qualities in abundance in the young Indian talent. In our country, more than half the population is below 25. So is the case at Flipkart. Our average age is in the 20s. And I'm sadly on the wrong side of the average now, having turned 30 just a few months back. So this team of young Indians executed brilliantly over the next 2 years. The results were magical. Over this 2-year period, we grew 30 times, 3,000% in 2 years. In 2 years, we went from 50 crores in revenue to 1,500 crores. And according to Nandan, our market cap went upwards of $1 billion. So what lies ahead for us? We believe that we are just getting started, and there's still a long, long way to go. We are still as hungry as we were 5 years back. And now we have a new foolish belief. In the telecom industry in India, the Indian consumer gave landlines a miss and went straight to mobile phones. We believe that something similar will happen in our industry as well. We believe that the Indian customer will go straight to online shopping. And we would want to be at the forefront of this revolution, just like Airtel was at the forefront of the telecom revolution. I would like to end with one of my favorite quotes from George Bernard Shaw. People are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. People who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances that they want. And if they can't find them, make them. Thank you.
Thanks, Benny. So we'll all watch your success. Now we have our final speaker, Alok Kejriwal, who's going to talk. He's again, he's done many companies. He's sold them. Now he runs one of the most successful game companies in the world. So, Alok.
Thanks, everybody. So, as Nandan introduced me, I'm a Marwadi, but I'm a rebel. And I made socks, the stuff that you wear on your feet, for 8 years. I made socks in my father's socks factory. And it was a kind of, funny business. Every morning you wake up, you go to work, and you come back home, and then someone says, "What do you do?" And you say, "I make socks." That went on for a couple, 2, 3, 5, 7 years, 8 years. And, abhi bhi moza bana raha hu main, something was kind of funny. But it's okay. As a good Marwadi boy, you do 3 things right. You get married young, you have children young because you're forced to, and then you just stick to the family business. That's what you do. And I pretty much did that, right? However, I think when I turned 28, something went wrong. I think my DNA, some chromosome must have gone loose. And I woke up one morning and I said, "We're going to make socks." And I said, "That's not happening, man. I mean, I can't go and wake up and do this for the rest of my life." So I told my father, I said, "We got to do something different." And he said, "No, nothing is different. Everything is fine. This is the way we do things. This is the way we do. And now we'll make another colored sock." I think that was, I think Malcolm Gladwell is speaking later, but that was my tipping point, right? I tripped, I tipped, I don't know what happened to me. Something went off. And I think there's a streak of rebelliousness that just set loose. And I said, I will try and prove everything that I have been taught and institutionalized, hopefully with God's grace and with luck and of course endeavor, to try and see whether the shackles of what we call classic businessman entrepreneurism can be broken. And I set about doing that. the curse is that if you are born in a business family, I'm a dinosaur, so I'm old. No much, you're not educated too much. ठीक है, BCom करो, चलो जल्दी भागो, धंधे में जाओ. So I was one of those guys. Now I'm a BCom guy. What am I going to do? Where am I going to get a job? Nandan's not going to give me a job if I'm coming to you and saying I'm a BCom. So I started thinking, and the one thing that I think entrepreneurs have trained themselves to do is to start enjoying their problems and make their problems their business. So I was always this contesting guy, promotions guy. I used to look at contests and I used to always want to win a car. I mean, a greedy guy. So free mein kya milta hai? Let's find that out. So this contest that I used to keep hounding was about winning a car. And the thing that they said always was, write a slogan, I love you because, for the brand, in return to win the car. And the brand was a soap. I don't love a soap. I'm not going to write slogans in my life trying to love a soap. There was something wrong, inherently wrong. So I kind of said, can I make contesting fun? Can I make promotions fun? And that began a journey for me called Contest to Win, which started a whole promotions online company. It was the beginning of a rather interesting and fun journey that I'm still enjoying. And I think, Nandan, you were talking about what is happening to the world of entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurialism, it all starts with your own experience. I mean, let me explain, let me pitch, kind of narrate a story at Hindustan Lever, 1998. So I was this, a hungry, passionate, foolish guy, pitching really hard. And I was pitching to Gunender Kapoor, GK, who was heading the Annapurna brand at that time. And he just loved the passion. And, he said, Alok, I love you, man. I mean, you keep, there's something about you that is making me compel you to say yes to your proposal. This was about internet promotion. And he says, I've understood everything. I've just not understood one question. This was at the end of the 46th minute. So I said, oh, thankfully now there'll be a question. And he says, what is the internet? And this was Hindustan Lever 98. And that time, these guys were spending 1 crore a day on advertising. And when I told him, GK said, oh, you got to meet the IT guys. And I said, no, this is a medium. This is where your kids are going to talk and play and have fun. He said, no, this IT jaise sound kar raha hai. So from there, there's been a large leap of, I think the one thing is just this whole brashness in saying that I can, I have to create categories. I mean, you guys have created categories within, Meena talked about how, you've started cab companies and, you've trained people to actually take credit cards out and sign it. I think the journey has been quite interesting. The other thing that I was taught never to do was to give equity away. My father never gave shares in his company to me. So how am I going to give my shares to someone else, right? When I asked him, he said, no, I'm not going to give you equity. You got some salary. So when I went my first VC and, Meena and I know eVentures, we have friends of eVentures sitting here. The guy said, I want 40% of your company. And I said, le lo yaar, no problem. I want the money. So I think the other thing was this whole demystification of equity and capital and all is all fine. Give me the money so that I can make something. And I think there needs to be a large kind of thought process involved that says, forget the stake business and I will get diluted. And I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who say, oh, koi aa jayega, someone's going to run my business for me. I said, they don't give a damn. Why will someone run your business? As long as you can. So that was interesting. I think the last fun experience I had was, the China dragon, right? This dragon that breathes fire and it eats everybody up. So SoftBank was one of our investors and they said, Alok, India is stuck, kuch ho nahi raha hai, come to China. And I said, whoa, what are you saying, man? That's the dragon that eats you up. They said, no, come to China. We'll make you successful in China. So we shipped, we had a 24-man team. We shipped 22 people to China, right? We literally flew the company into China. And we said, come on, let's start a business in China. We started a mobile venture. And tough as hell. Nandan, I'm telling you, sometimes I feel that we are so blessed to be in a country like India, where things happen. You have a contract, it gets honored. You have a court of law. Long story short, that company was finally acquired by Disney in 2006-07. And to sell my company, I had to write to the Ministry of Culture and Information in China saying, can I sell my company? And that was so bizarre because that's not the way it's supposed to be. So we sold that and, we did the whole Indian Idol business in India, so the whole voting platform. But I think the message that I got, the fun that I got was, you can make companies to sell them, there's no problem. You can take capital from people and, give them your company's equity, there's no problem. Getting rich is, I was trained as a Marwadi to be happy, but I think it's my calling card. I want to be rich, I want to be greedy, I want to drive a Porsche. I think very few people have the guts to say that in public forums because they're not trained to, you're supposed to be coy and, don't brash, but I want to be rich. That's what, this guy told me in Wall Street, right? Gordon Gekko. So that became my mantra. But I think we need a lot of flavors of entrepreneurs in India, and we need to have crazy people. I think I'm one of the crazy guys to say, like, fail. Celebrate failure. Who cares? Because it's all about trying to do something different and not make socks.
Thanks, Alok. Now, I want a quick question, quick answer on this. Now, because, you sold companies and you're doing the next one, and I know that your current company does millions of game downloads and all that. Meena, you also been very successful selling companies, and now you're doing 4 at a time and all that. So there's one view is that, this so-called serial entrepreneur thing where you make a company, grow it, then you sell it off, and then you start something else. The other model is, you run a company for a long time and make it grow big, like, Google guys or the Amazon guys, Jeff Bezos still running Amazon. And Binny, I think some sense I get it that you're looking at a play like that, really getting. So what do you guys feel about this whole, is this a sprint or a marathon? I'm not being judgments here, but what is the two styles of entrepreneurship here? Maybe quickly, all three of you, yeah.
I think it's a relay race. So I run part of my relay and then I hand the baton over. I'm not a Superman to run all 4 laps. I love to flip companies. I love to get onto the new thing, call it the fact that I think the fun, it's like fashion, just start something else. And Nandan, to be honest, there's enough failures around us. Look at Groupon, right? You cannot hold on forever. There has to be the point that I have done my bit and there's someone bigger and larger than me who can take this forward. I think it's a kind of self-glorification to say that I'm the only guy who can make this bigger. I don't think so.
So you believe in taking a company to a certain size and then...
Absolutely, because someone's always got a better vision and bigger idea, at least in the space I come from, games, tech, very fast flipping idea businesses, where someone else has got the brand. I mean, my mobile company in China is much larger than it would have ever been thanks to Disney. I wouldn't have been able to manage the government in China, forget running my company.
Meena, you've been also very successful at this.
Yeah. I tend to agree with Alok. I think an entrepreneur, by nature, is somebody who likes the change, who likes the whole spark of creating. And I don't know whether they are the best people to build and run and scale it forever and be the guys who run $1 billion, $165 billion company. That's what I worked for when I worked for Tesco. I don't know whether I would love to do that. So each one has to do what they're best at and then hand it over to the person who takes it from there. I'm very happy that Tutor Vista is with Pearson, world's largest education company. We'll take it places, we'll take that entire concept and take it to the whole world. Great, good for the company.
Binny, you seem to have a different mental model.
Yeah. I think it's more of a personal thing. I think entrepreneurs, are of 2 types. I think we have a couple of them here who think differently. I think we at Flipkart think a little differently. It also sort of depends on the potential of change that you can keep making in your own company. So we believe the kind of opportunity that we have comes along in a country like India like 2-3 times in a decade. I mean, came to Infosys, came to Airtel, right? Now we have the opportunity to create something like that. And we don't want to let go of that opportunity. So we want to create a very big company.
Sure. Okay, now the one more thing is, I think in this whole talk about economic democracy, I think easy entry of new entrepreneurs becomes very important, because unless you have new entrepreneurs and they can do companies, then it's the same old guys. But you said that you are a rebel, family business, sock making to IT and all that. But the fact of the matter is, even today, family businesses do dominate India. So when do you see a lot more people like you who leave their traditional activities or are first generation entrepreneurs like the other two and really change the needle on creating a thriving new disruptive set of companies and entrepreneurs? Do you see that happening anytime soon, all of you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The supply side of entrepreneurs is completely now coming from the non-business side, which is, young guys who say up to 30 I can try and do stuff. I think in colleges. I mean, I was telling Nandan in the speakers lounge that in the northern India side we see this lal batti fetish. Everybody wants a lal batti, but I think in the south, yeah, okay, Delhi maybe, but I think in the western and the southern regions we don't have a lal batti fascination. We want my company startup fascination. On the family business side, I think they were stuck. There's a lot of young generation family members who are being given some seed capital by their fathers only to do what that's in their industry. So if I tell my father today that, give me $500,000 from your socks company so that I can make virtual farms that sell mangoes, like Mango Wheel, I don't think he'll agree. So the experiment risk capital that, grandfathers own is not going to come loose. And that's where venture capital and risk capital and seed capital needs to be.
See, I think while it's important to be able to start, equally important should be able to shut down. Because that's something that I don't think as a culture, as a framework of regulation and rules and all of that does not encourage failure. Okay, and I think that's as important to be able to start up. So right now there's huge amount of energy. Startup, we'll provide you incubation support, some money, everything. But people need to be able to say that now we are pulling the plug. These 5 things will not work. No shame in that. Okay, money was spent, fine, but we've learned a lesson. Let's move on and do something else. I think that entire culture needs to come in. Once that comes in, this whole thing will get even more fast forward.
Yeah, I think 2 things. So one, the internet and the venture capital ecosystem. I think both are playing an amazing role in creation of new entrepreneurs, whether they are from Marwari families or others. So if I take my own example, during my 12 to 5 job, I used to just scour the internet for demystification of what is venture capital, how does it work, how do you start a company, right? All of that. And also read about how did other people start companies, get inspired. So I think both the ecosystem which has developed over the last 10 years and the internet penetration which has increased much more is sort of demystifying what it takes to start a business. Right. And it's really helping create new entrepreneurs.
I want to ask Benny a question. Sure. Benny, what is 12 to 5 job? When you were doing 12 to 5 and you were scouring the internet, what were you doing? What was the job? Were you doing something?
Yeah, so I joined Amazon in Jan 2007. Okay. And in a couple of months, I was like, why the hell am I here?
Yeah. Okay, now, all 3 of you have done businesses that have some kind of a regulatory impact. I think Meena, for example, education is highly regulated. For Binny, there are all these FDI in commerce, all those issues, as well as, payment systems. I think in your case too, telecom is highly regulated, which you use as a platform. So since all 3 of you are visiting the city of Lal Batis, what are the 3 things you think needs to be done regulatory-wise or government policy-wise, which can have a dramatic impact on growing your businesses?
Stay away from our lives. Just the farther you stay away, the better we become.
Still need some government. Yeah.
I think capital, if there is some kind of, easy, let me explain this. I think it's easier to get an EMI on a 50 lakh rupee car than to get 50 lakh rupees to starting up a venture. So I think getting a lease on a car, we put premiums on that. There'll be guys who sell me car loans 10 times a day, but there's nobody who allows an entrepreneur with a good pedigree and background to get a 50 lakh rupee loan that can become the next Infosys or the Flipkart, right? So there's something is stuck. The incentive structure in providing capital is very, very weird towards ROI and only safe ROI. And I think the third thing, Meena, you raised this Singapore thing. I don't know about Singapore, but it's punitive to be an entrepreneur. I have some small employees in the US. Nandan, I sign on 17 places to send them their salary. If I miss that salary day, my CFO gets it signed on the 27th of the month so that the poor guy can get salary on the 31st. What the hell? Why should I sign 17 places to send salary to some guy? Because, he's my employee. So there's too much regulation.
You're right, Nandan, that working in the education sector gets you across to the babus quite a bit. But what I would love, especially in a sector like education, that having just exited out of that, I'd say that the government needs to understand that there's no choice but to work with entrepreneurs, but to work with private partners, because the problem is so huge. The government cannot do all the investment that it takes to be able to make the changes that we need. And here we are trying to bring in so many roadblocks. There are people who are willing to put their time, money, intellect to solve the problem, and there are roadblocks. Can we not work together?
I think a couple of things. I think the regulations need to be consistent. You can't have one thing one day and something else the other, like Meena said, right? And I think they need to evolve much faster with the new generation, right? I mean, businesses are going so fast that your regulations can be far behind. If regulations are behind the businesses, then the country will not grow because, again, creative destruction will just not happen. So I think those two things are most important right now.
Great. Now, I think before we go to the general audience, we have a couple of experts here. So, Shailesh has been with Google, now he's with Twitter. And Shailesh, do you have any questions for the panel?
I have many questions, but I'll just ask one. First of all, I should say, as a member of the technology community, one thing we do very well is we support each other. And so in that spirit, I should say, the most important thing for entrepreneurship to accelerate and flourish in India is to have heroes and role models. And I think we'll all agree that Nandan has been, playing that role for many of us, and we want to thank him for that. And many of you hopefully will be role models and heroes to future generations of entrepreneurs. But okay, that's the nice part. The difficult question, or maybe the more important question, is because I believe that the entrepreneurial community, the talent of India, has no limits. I think it's fair to ask, when will we see the first truly global, iconic startup from an entrepreneur out of India that's on par with Silicon Valley, perhaps beyond that, because we have 1.2 billion people in this petri dish of India to test our products and services? What is it going to take? What will that business look like? Do you think by 2015, 2020, such a thing is possible? I'd like to hear your thoughts about the global opportunity. Or do you think the premise of the question is false because there's enough work and opportunity to do here with the size and the complexity of the country that the premise of that question is false? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, Meena, why don't you start?
Okay. Thank you for electing me to answer that difficult question.
All of them will answer, obviously.
Sure. Shailesh, I very strongly believe that because, like you said, India is the petri dish to try out things, there is a very great opportunity if we can identify those problems which are truly, genuinely impacting us. So today, the kind of problems that we're all working on are slightly more esoteric, but there are real problems down on the ground, whether it's education or healthcare or water, whatever it is. If those problems, we can find some solutions, there is no boundary to taking that solution to other countries. I do believe in some small way, whatever we did in our education sector work with creating school management solutions actually are being taken to other countries. That model does not exist in any other country, certainly in the whole Pearson world. So Pearson very categorically acquired Tutor Vista so that they could take it and actually export that model to other countries. So it is possible, especially if you look at those things which are ground level problems, technology can be used to solve those problems, then I do believe that there is an opportunity to take it elsewhere. And I do hope that in the next decade at least, we should be seeing some big impact, social impact solutions which are being exported from here.
Yeah. So I agree with Meena. I think the problems that the entrepreneurs in India are solving are quite different from what the global internet companies are solving. And I think for the next 5 years, I think there's sort of enough problems to solve here. I think once companies sort of get really large scale, once internet grows in India to 300, 400 million people, and we have large internet companies, I think that is when they will have the bandwidth to go out and become global. I think before that happens, I don't see large global successes coming.
Shailesh, I think the question is a little old-fashioned. It's nice to have asked this question 3 years ago. I think there's no concept anymore of the big global hit because it all depends on what you're talking about. I mean, Twitter is a big global hit, but that's a consumer play. You know, there are lots and lots of B2B marketplaces which nobody knows of in this room, which are really great companies. But to really answer your question more pointedly, if the aspiration is to be the next Twitter from India, the Google from India, Facebook from India, start in a college dorm, then we need capital that backs that. I mean, we need capital that says, take $300 million and don't show me revenue. I don't want revenue. I want product. I want consumer. Hey, why are you talking about revenue in a board meeting? Do not give me forget profitability, don't show me revenue. That conversation in the boardroom with venture cap is all about show me top line, show me bottom line, show me growth in, revenue. So,
Hello, can I challenge that just for a
sure,
moment?
please.
I think the one thing we've seen in the last 10, 15, 20 years is that capital moves freely around the world. So I personally don't believe in the argument of capital at all.
Sure.
I think the real question for me is when you're sitting with an IIM Ahmedabad student or an IIT student, and 90% of that class has no interest in being an entrepreneur because they're afraid of taking a risk or what have you. And maybe that's the wrong community
No, no.
you'll be targeting.
I want to interject because I want to give you an example of IMA. I just told Nandan, I spoke there 3 weeks ago, and this is MBA class 2, which is a graduating class. About 80 people in the room, and I asked them how many of them had read the autobiography of Steve Jobs. Not one person raised his hand, and not even the professor. And I was looking at these guys and saying, what do you
So
reading,
let's
sir?"
agree that the premise is that
Exactly.
maybe a more important question is the culture of risk-taking.
Yes.
Not everybody will take a risk.
Right.
But the culture of risk-taking, what does it take to make that culturally, socially more acceptable so that people feel comfortable in pursuing the ideas and the dreams they have in their head and making it a reality? Because I think that, more than capital for me, is the more important question.
I think it's going to be a fragmented success story rather than looking at one. I mean, they're going to be Red Bus, for example, great success story, revolutionized the way people travel in India. It doesn't have to be a global business. It's local. You don't need to have reservation systems of buses anywhere else. So I think, one should really celebrate the fact that there are entrepreneurs who are scaling, whether they're doing it on a global scale or any other scale, and at least getting lots and lots of consumers, making lives easier for people, right? That's where it all begins. I mean,
Thanks. We have Padmaja Ruparal here. She is the president of the Indian Angel Network. So maybe, does she have a question?
Thank you. First of all of you are really icons of successful entrepreneurs that India has sort of brought, and this is really replacing some of our older icons. So congratulations, and very inspiring to be here. I thought, all the issues that Meena and especially that you brought up on tax issues or funding issues and the culture of accepting failure. It's true, even ease of doing business, we are only 139th in the list of companies. So there is a huge climb to sort of build entrepreneurship, which is really what all of you have said is employment generator, which is one of our key focus areas. Just to ask a very provocative question, is there an opportunity here that there is a national nodal collaborative initiative to really bring entrepreneurship and develop it nationally? And I don't mean like a government agency, please, though we are sitting in Delhi, but we've seen several models like a NASSCOM, like an NSDC, or a BCCI, which is sort of focused on various initiatives, right? The IT industry got a lot of impetus with the collaborative model that NASSCOM did. BCCI has picked up cricket as a cause. Is there something you feel, all of you, that there is a collaborative model which will really drive entrepreneurship and culturally create it as a career path for many of our youngsters, bring in money, tax issues or regulatory issues? Is there something there?
Meena? I don't think so. I can't even imagine what that would look like. It sounds not your idea, but it itself is so complicated to bring so many things together. I mean, instead of IITs and IIMs, we need an IE, like an Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship at the best, so that at least you can make people understand failing, getting bust. So, those are subjects I wish they could teach in school. But beyond that, together at a national, maybe I'm uneducated, that's why.
So I think now we'll throw it open to the audience. Are there any questions? Okay, some guy, one of those hands out there. Whoever gets the mic first.
I'm Rajendra Badawat. Nice listening to all of you. I think I would like you to comment on one thing that here it said that nothing succeeds like success and failure is frowned upon. So is it not, you think it's not essential for us to teach to accept failure as a stepping stone to bigger successes? Because failure is a capacity to fail and the ability to go beyond failures. that is what is lacking, and I think that is what needs to be built in the younger generation particularly. Yeah. And maybe some of you have said that the one failure led to bigger success. So the capacity to absorb failure.
Vinny, but he's not failed.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point, and it is very important. Before I joined Amazon, Google rejected me twice, once in 2005, then in 2006, and it was my dream job. And that didn't stop me from starting Flipkart and making it a success. So I think today's young generation is not afraid of failure. When I look at resumes, I see a lot of people who have started companies and sort of shut them down in 2-3 years and are coming back to sort of companies like Flipkart with which they can relate to. So I think that is sort of happening. You can't really force it. I think it's already happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just not, you're seeing them because in your tech, in your Flipkart, and you get these resumes. But, if you go to the IITs and talk, and, there's that whole blanket of shrouding we're so tuned till you're 22 to perform. Every single percentage in your mark sheet is life-changing. So to just reverse your DNA and now say that, the lower the marks, the better, is very, very difficult. So I think there's a cultural shift, where parents need to start by saying, okay, it doesn't matter if you did, and it's an oxymoron, right? I mean, how do you fail to succeed? But that's the truth. So I think there's a very, very important, everything we see, everybody on TV is a superstar. Every media guy talks about superstars. So where's the super failure? It's a very big question.
Well, actually, I want Deep Kalra. Deep Kalra has built another $1 billion business in online world. Deep, you want to say something or?
Probably the most successful.
Yeah. Thanks, Nandan, all my friends on the panel. Sorry, I got a little late getting here. So I think what Alok said is really relevant. But Alok, the way to put it, I think, would be if we celebrated the stories with the whole story.
Yeah.
And not just the end. So the end is, happy ending for many people, we hear about it. But then those stories, and I heard you talk about Jobs, no one really talks about what he went through.
Exactly.
To get thrown out of the company that you founded by the guy who you brought in to save the company is incredible. And then to come back and rebuild the company is amazing. So people don't talk about all of those. So I think if we get into that culture a bit more, so like I think the US and Silicon Valley does a pretty good job. People say quite proudly that, I failed in my first 2 ventures. Now you can argue and say you can say that if you succeeded in your third. But, it's changing a lot, the kind of folks we're hiring. I think some of our best folks are folks who have tried their hand at entrepreneurship. Right. I won't say, they failed. Right. They just didn't make it enough to go it alone. But they're the best guys you can hire in companies like ours. And at least that's what we find a lot.
I'm really sorry, but I think the spiritual session is about to start or something. So we'll have to bring this to an end. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank these 3 brilliant young entrepreneurs for the very honest talk. Thank you. Thank you, Meena. Thank you, Alok. Thank you, Binny.
Thank you, Mr. Nilekani. Can I please request Dinesh Bhatia, CFO of India Today Group, to come on stage and give a small token of appreciation to all the speakers, all the gentlemen and the lady here on the stage. And with him, can I please request Mr. Ashish Bagga also to please step up on stage.
This will be right at the end. The best is for the last. Thank you. Brilliant. Nandan, this is for you. I'm sure it's very special.
Thank you. Thank you.